Number 10. The bulletproof dollar. Imagine you're standing on a stage giving a passionate speech, and suddenly, crack! A would-be assassin fires a gun aiming straight for your heart. You brace for impact, expecting the worst. But instead of collapsing, you feel a dull thud. You reach into your breast pocket, pull out your thick speech manuscript, and discover a folded pair of eyeglasses and a 5-cent steel spectacle case, completely mangled, with a bullet lodged inside. This isn't the plot of a B-movie. This actually happened to Theodore Roosevelt on October 14, 1912, in Milwaukee. Roosevelt, campaigning for a third presidential term, was about to deliver a 50-page speech folded thick when John Schrank's .38 caliber Colt revolver went off. The bullet penetrated his overcoat, passed through the folded manuscript, then through his glasses case, and finally lodged in his chest. And what did Roosevelt do? The absolute legend insisted on giving his 90-minute speech before seeking medical attention, famously telling the crowd, "It takes more than that to kill a bull moose." Doctors later determined the combined mass of the manuscript and the glasses had slowed the bullet enough to prevent it from reaching his lung or heart. If that speech had been a pamphlet, or if he'd forgotten his spectacles, American history might have taken a very different turn. Basically, a man's long-windedness literally saved his life. Number 9. The Unsinkable Sisters. Picture this. You're a ship stewardess. You've survived a catastrophic ocean liner sinking, been rescued, and somehow, despite the trauma, you go back to sea. Then, unbelievably, you survive another one. And then, because the universe apparently has a twisted sense of humor, you survive a third major naval disaster, all within a few years. Meet Violet Jessup, dubbed Miss Unsinkable, whose life story makes fiction look tame. Violet Jessup was a stewardess on the RMS Olympic in 1911 when it collided with a warship, the HMS Hawk. Both ships were damaged, but Jessup's vessel managed to limp back to port. A year later, in April 1912, she was on board the RMS Titanic when it hit an iceberg and sank. She was ordered onto Lifeboat 16 and survived the icy waters. If that wasn't enough to make you swear off boats forever, she then served as a nurse on the HMHS Britannic during World War I. In 1916, the Britannic, converted to a hospital ship, sank after an explosion, likely from a mine. Jessup narrowly escaped death again, jumping from a lifeboat that was almost sucked into the ship's propellers. She later attributed her survival to her thick auburn hair, which kept her head warm in the freezing water. Basically, the ocean tried 3 times to claim this woman, and she just politely declined each invitation. Number 8. The Emperor's Toothache in the War. Imagine a world leader, holding the fate of nations in his hands, making a monumental decision that will cost millions of lives, all because of a toothache. Sounds like something out of a cynical comedy, right? But some historians argue that the agony of a dental abscess played a role in Kaiser Wilhelm II's ill-fated decisions at the outset of World War I. Wilhelm II, the German emperor, was a volatile and impulsive man to begin with. But in the summer of 1914, his temper and erratic behavior were reportedly amplified by an excruciating dental infection. He was suffering from a severe abscess that doctors were hesitant to operate on due to fears of infection, leaving him in constant, agonizing pain. He reportedly became even more aggressive, less rational, and prone to extreme outbursts, pushing for war with a feverish intensity. While certainly not the sole cause of World War I, that's a whole other video, some historians suggest his unbearable pain may have impaired his judgment at critical moments, making him less inclined to de-escalate the escalating tensions across Europe. A small, inflamed tooth, a tiny pocket of bacteria, potentially contributing to a conflict that reshaped the entire world. Basically, sometimes the biggest problems start with the smallest, most annoying pain. Number 7. The Literary Lifesaver. Imagine being a struggling author, your words unread, your talent unrecognized. Then one day, you write a novel, a work of fiction so obscure it barely sees the light of day. Fast forward a few decades, and that very book, precisely because it was so unknown, becomes the key to solving a real-life high-stakes mystery. This isn't a plot twist from a Hollywood script. It's the bizarre true story surrounding the 1898 novel Futility, or The Wreck of the Titan by Morgan Robertson. Robertson's book told the tale of a fictional, unsinkable ocean liner named the Titan, which, on its maiden voyage across the Atlantic, strikes an iceberg and sinks due to an insufficient number of lifeboats, resulting in a massive loss of life. Sounds familiar? That's because 14 years later, in April 1912, the RMS Titanic, a real-life, unsinkable ship, embarked on its maiden voyage across the Atlantic, struck an iceberg, and sank with an insufficient number of lifeboats. The parallels were eerie. Both ships were roughly the same size, had similar speeds, and even sank in the same area of the North Atlantic. Robertson's book, once a literary flop, suddenly became a chilling premonition, catapulting it into infamy. While purely coincidental, the book's existence provided an almost unbelievable pre-written narrative for one of history's greatest maritime disasters. Basically, sometimes the universe decides your obscure fan fiction is actually a spoiler. Number 6. The Synchronized Brothers Bike Edition. Think about the odds. Two brothers, separated at birth, adopted by different families, growing up miles apart, completely unaware of each other's existence. Then, without any prior knowledge, they both gravitate towards incredibly specific, identical life choices. This isn't just a quirky family anecdote. It's the astonishing case of Jim Lewis and Jim Springer, a pair of twins who, after 39 years apart, reunited to discover a laundry list of unbelievable coincidences. While their entire lives were a series of synchronous events, both married women named Linda, then women named Betty, both had sons named James Allen, though spelled differently, both named their dogs Toy, one of the most striking was their shared passion for a very specific hobby: bicycle racing. Both Jims had taken up competitive cycling, not just as a casual pastime, but with a serious, almost obsessive dedication. They both frequented the same type of racing events, albeit in different states, and even favored similar brands of racing bikes. It's one thing to both like to read, it's another entirely to both dedicate yourselves to a niche sport that requires specific gear and training. Their stories are a goldmine for anyone arguing the power of genetics over environment. Basically, their DNA was so insistent, it wrote their life scripts in parallel. Number 5. The Doppelganger in Dirt. Imagine living your life, doing your daily routine, and then you encounter someone who is undeniably your identical twin. Same face, same build, same quirky mannerisms. Only this isn't a long-lost sibling, it's a perfect stranger. And then you learn they died. This isn't a morbid fantasy. It's the chilling true story of one of history's most uncanny coincidences involving World War I. During the First World War, an English soldier was killed by a German sniper. When they pulled his body out of the trenches, they found identification papers on him. To their absolute astonishment, the papers belonged to another soldier who had been killed the day before by the very same sniper. Not only that, but when they looked at the two dead soldiers, they were said to be almost identical in appearance, despite being unrelated and having no prior connection. The chances of one sniper killing two different men who look exactly alike on consecutive days, defying all statistical probability, is mind-boggling. It speaks to a level of cosmic joke-telling that even the most cynical among us would find unsettling. Basically, the universe decided one sniper deserved a morbid identical set of trophies. Number 4. The near-identical assassins. Imagine two political assassinations separated by nearly a century, targeting leaders of vastly different eras, yet unfolding with an almost uncanny similarity. It's the kind of historical echo that makes you wonder if fate has a bizarre sense of symmetry. We're talking about the assassinations of Abraham Lincoln and John F. Kennedy, a pair of coincidences so prolific they've become an urban legend in their own right. While many of the specific facts in the famous list of Lincoln-Kennedy coincidences have been debunked or exaggerated over time, no, Lincoln's secretary wasn't named Kennedy and Kennedy's wasn't named Lincoln, the genuine ones are still chillingly numerous. Both were shot in the back of the head on a Friday, in the presence of their wives. Both had successors named Johnson, Andrew Johnson and Lyndon B. Johnson, both of whom were Southern Democrats and former senators. Both assassins, John Wilkes Booth and Lee Harvey Oswald, were known by 3 names with a total of 15 letters. Booth shot Lincoln in a theater and fled to a warehouse. Oswald shot Kennedy from a warehouse and fled to a theater. Both assassins were themselves assassinated before they could be brought to trial. While the internet has certainly had its fun adding fabricated details, the core parallels that are true remain astounding. It's almost as if history decided to hit the replay button, just with different actors. Basically, some historical events apparently come in eerily similar sequels. Number 3. The Saved Siblings, Bridge Edition. Consider this. A child falls into a river, almost drowns, only to be saved by a quick-thinking stranger. Years later, a different child from the same family falls into the same river, in the same spot, and is saved by the same stranger. This isn't a heartwarming tale of a dedicated guardian angel. It's the mind-bogglingly improbable true story of a man named Joseph Figlock and 2 young siblings in Detroit. In 1937, a baby named Joseph fell from a 4th-story window in Detroit. Miraculously, he landed on Joseph Figlock, a street sweeper who happened to be walking by, breaking the baby's fall and saving his life. Both were relatively unharmed. If that wasn't enough to make you cancel your lottery ticket and consider Figlock a walking good luck charm, a year later, the same baby Joseph fell from the same window. And who was walking by beneath, once again, breaking his fall and saving his life? Joseph Figlock. The odds of this happening once are astronomical. For it to happen twice, with the same people, in the same bizarre manner, defies all logical explanation. It's a cosmic roll of the dice that landed on the exact same impossible number twice. Basically, Joseph Figlock was either incredibly lucky, incredibly unlucky, or just had a very specific recurring appointment with falling babies. Number 2. The Double-Decker Doomed Passenger. Imagine being a pedestrian, minding your own business, when suddenly you are struck and killed by a person falling from a building. Tragic, but not entirely unheard of. Now imagine, a year later in the exact same spot, another pedestrian is struck and killed by another person falling from the exact same building. And then you find out the 2 victims were brothers. No, this isn't a morbid urban legend. It's the unsettling true story of 2 brothers in Bermuda in the early 20th century. In 1974, on the island of Bermuda, a man was riding his moped when he was struck and killed by a taxi. Exactly 1 year later, in 1975, his brother was riding the same moped on the same street and was struck and killed by the same taxi driver, carrying the same passenger. Yes, you read that right. The sheer number of identical variables in this horrific scenario is enough to make you question the fabric of reality. The odds of this sequence of events occurring purely by chance are so infinitesimally small that it almost feels like a meticulously planned, incredibly cruel, and perfectly executed act of fate. The universe, it seems, sometimes reuses its most tragic scripts. Basically, sometimes the universe decides a dramatic irony just has to happen, no matter how many people it inconveniences. Number 1. The First and Last, Train Edition. Think about the incredible unlikelihood of being involved in both the very first and the very last recorded fatality of a new revolutionary mode of transport, years apart. It's a statistical anomaly that screams main character energy in the most tragic way possible. This is the chilling story of Mary Ward and Bridget Driscoll, who both hold the unfortunate distinction of being bookends in the history of a major invention. In 1869, Mary Ward became the world's first documented motor vehicle fatality. She was an Irish scientist and author who was riding in a steam-powered car built by her cousins. The car hit a rut, threw her out, and she was crushed beneath its wheel. A tragic end, marking the dawn of automotive dangers. Fast forward to 1896, in London, when Bridget Driscoll became the UK's first pedestrian fatality involving a motor car. She was run over by a car traveling at a blistering 4 miles per hour. Both women were pioneers of a sort, tragically marking the beginning of an era. The coincidence isn't just that they died in car accidents, but that they were the first documented fatalities in their respective regions' contexts, separated by decades. It's like being the first person to get a paper cut from the printing press, and also the last person to get a paper cut from a typewriter before computers took over. The universe sometimes assigns roles, and these 2 women got the grim distinction of opening and closing a very specific and unfortunate historical chapter. Basically, fate decided these 2 women were destined to be morbid footnotes in the history of horsepower.